My name is Darren. Welcome to my YouTube channel. For today's video, we'll be pressing on with our mini-series on vocal horsepower, one of the 3 types of opera singing among the 9 elements of opera. We are now into the 4th episode. Vocal horsepower is a type of opera singing which demands penetrative power and weight. In my first 2 episodes, I explained what vocal horsepower was all about, as well as the difference it can make in an opera. In the last episode, I walked you through the opera Otello by Verdi to show you what vocal horsepower is like in practice. For this episode, we are still going to be on that opera because there are quite a number of things left over from the previous episodes. In the previous video, Standard Bearer Iago is seeking to topple his commanding officer, the Moorish general Otello. We saw Otello return to the Venetian colony of Cyprus, victorious in his battle against the Ottomans. He is at the peak of his glory, newly married to Desdemona. Iago detects an opening in the form of the young captain Cassio. He plies Cassio with wine and instigates his accomplice Roderigo to pick a fight with an intoxicated Cassio. Another officer, sent to summon Cassio to his post on the walls, is dragged into the brawl and sustains a wound. The brawl is stopped by Otello, who steps in to restore order. Cassio is dismissed from his position as captain for injuring his comrade. Otello orders everybody to vacate the scene, and he rounds out the first act of the opera with a love duet with his newly married wife Desdemona. The previous video ended with the conclusion of this love duet. For this video, we resume with Verdi's Otello. It commences with the beginning of the opera's second act, where we find Iago suggesting to Cassio that he appeal to Desdemona for her to intercede for his reinstatement. After Cassio leaves, Iago clues us, the audience, in on the evil motivations for his scheme, with a musical monologue, Iago's credo. He's evil for the sake of it. When Iago finishes singing, he takes up his position, watching Cassio appeal to Desdemona. By some ill star of fate, Otello stumbles on this scene. Knowing that Otello is able to see what he's looking at, Iago sets his scheme in motion. He comments that he doesn't like what seems to be happening between Desdemona and Cassio loudly enough for Otello to hear him. Curious about Iago's remark, Otello questions him. Iago only answers with evasive replies and implicit doubts about Cassio's past relationship with Desdemona. He succeeds in arousing Otello's suspicions as the two of them observe Desdemona receiving the adoration of the local people. After the local people have left, the first thing Desdemona does when she catches sight of Otello is to intercede for Cassio's reinstatement. To Otello, this justifies the suspicions Iago planted in his mind. He declines to discuss this with her. Desdemona fails to catch Otello's cue. Misinterpreting Otello's gloomy reaction as a headache on his part, she offers to wrap his forehead with a handkerchief. Pay close attention to this handkerchief. It has a fatally decisive role in the story of this opera. Irritated, Otello knocks it onto the floor. Otello scolds Desdemona. She fails to pacify him. Meanwhile, Desdemona's maid, Emilia, has picked up the fallen handkerchief. It captures Iago's attention. Iago, citing his authority as Emilia's husband, commands her to hand over the handkerchief. Emilia refuses, so Iago has to wrest it from her. As Otello scolds Desdemona, the darkness in his heart strengthens its hold over him. Eyeing Otello's worsening reaction, and the handkerchief now in his hands, Iago sees an opportunity to advance to the next stage of his scheme. Otello reaches the point of despair. By now, he's convinced that Desdemona is having an affair with Cassio. Otello increasingly loses himself in negative thoughts. He's too self-absorbed to hear her out. Desdemona's uncomprehending inability to dispel those negative thoughts was what convinced him about her purported affair. Otello blames Iago for causing him misery with this revelation of Desdemona's so-called adultery. He sings a farewell to arms in his despair, Ora e per sempre addio, which we shall now listen to. Mario del Monaco, who plays the role of Otello here, flaunts his vocal horsepower.
Addio vestillo, trionfale Dio, e già respingorti e solvati. Gloria canti di battaglia, addio, della gloria la fella, e questo è
To me, Ova e per sempre addio is the expanded equivalent of his Esultate, his musical entrance. It gives a demonstration of vocal horsepower that, unlike Esultate, lasts long enough for me to enjoy. It thus has always been my favourite musical number from this opera. Demanding evidence of Desdemona's so-called adultery, Otello manhandles Iago. Iago protests that any more violence on Otello's part would deter him from telling Otello more. Otello calms down, but he persists in demanding for evidence. Instead of physical evidence, Iago offers a graphic account of Cassio having a dream, which I presume is wet, about Desdemona. He alleges that he was able to witness this because he heard Cassio talking in his sleep while they were in their quarters. In this scene, sometimes referred to as Cassio's dream, Iago sings the monologue, Era la notte. In the monologue, he not only describes Cassio's dream in terms that leave little to the imagination, he also imitates Cassio's sleep talking. Through this monologue, Iago spoon-feeds Otello with a heavy dose of poison. Sensing that his poison is beginning to take effect, Iago claims that he has another piece of evidence to offer. This piece of evidence is a handkerchief Iago alleges to have seen in Cassio's hands the day before. Poisoned by Iago, Otello fails to realize that the handkerchief Iago mentioned was the same handkerchief he has just knocked out of Desdemona's hand earlier that day. He explodes at Iago's allegation. It turns out that the handkerchief Iago was talking about was a handkerchief he had given Desdemona as an engagement present. Otello interprets Iago's allegation as a sign that Desdemona no longer loves him. An engagement present symbolizes the relationship between a couple. For her to pass it on to somebody else, it means that she no longer treasures her marriage. If that somebody is her so-called lover, who's supposedly Cassio, it's as good as her mocking Otello's passion for her. To Otello, this betrayal is the worst possible. He's naturally angry about her suspected affair, but I think that what really infuriates him is his suspicion that she's been playing with his feelings. During the love duet in the previous video, receiving Desdemona's adoration reduces Otello to the point of collapse. From my point of view, it shows how unprepared he is to receive such treatment. As a general who rose through the ranks from slavery, Otello's background being revealed in the love duet, his heart had been hollowed out from all the abuse and adversity he suffered, so Desdemona is able to leave such impact. Moreover, as someone of considerable seniority, both in terms of age and position, plus being in a position where he's supposed to be a role model to his men, manipulation by a woman is something that's triply humiliating. Hence, Otello's rage is bound to have grave consequences. Otello resolves to avenge his disgrace. Now we come to the combat scene in Otello. Iago's the rival. He's a rival in the sense that he's competing with Desdemona for mastery over Otello's heart. Whereas Desdemona seeks Otello's heart out of love, Iago seeks Otello's heart out of malice. This combat scene is in the form of a duet. Otello swears vengeance. Iago follows with a vow to render his utmost assistance to Otello in executing his vengeance. At the same time, his vow sets a commitment on Otello to fortify his resolve. Otello ends off the duet by repeating the vow he swore earlier as confirmation. In the concluding phase of the duet, Iago swears the same vow as Otello simultaneously to remind him of his promise. This duet, known as the Vengeance or Oath duet, is one of the most famous musical numbers in this opera, to a large extent because it gave rise to two of the greatest recordings in the history of opera. We'll now go through it together. First, we have Otello do his swearing. At this instant, Otello is very agitated. So this occasion calls for him to sing in a spirited and forceful way. Here, Del Monaco would have to utilize his vocal horsepower. Then it's Iago's turn to do his swearing. Iago sings with as much spirit and force as Otello. Finally, Otello repeats his vow with Iago following suit. Iago might not be as emotional as Otello, but his swearing, being the proclamation of a vendetta, is all seriousness, so he has to sing with more drama here. When we listen to Otello repeating his vow with Iago following suit, it sounded as if both singers were competing with each other to find out who could sing more powerfully. Both Del Monaco and the singer in the role of Iago, Tito Gobbi, went all out, but the astounding thing is that the music's composed in such a way that they are equally matched. At the end of the duet, the two singers closed it off by delivering electrifying, adrenaline-flooding high notes. This duet is able to give rise to great recordings because it provides the tenor and the baritone with a good opportunity to showcase their vocal qualities, such as the sizes of their voices and their reserves of vocal horsepower. It's the operatic equivalent of a bodybuilding competition, since you have two singers competing to produce the manlier sound. This is what makes it so thrilling and rousing. Until now, I've yet to say what class of baritone Iago belongs to. It only becomes apparent here. To be able to compete with dramatic tenor Otello, Iago has to be a dramatic baritone, the class of baritone with the most vocal horsepower, since you need the large reserves required. When Act 3 of Verdi's Otello opens, standard bearer Iago notifies General Otello that you fetch Captain Cassio so he can expose Cassio's affair with Otello's wife Desdemona. Desdemona approaches. Therefore, Iago suggests that Otello pretend that all's well to put her off guard before he sets off. The stage is now ready for the second duet between Otello and Desdemona. This second duet is a nearly total opposite of their first duet, which we listened to previously. The first duet, Già nella notte densa, is a duet by a couple entirely in love with one another. However, this second duet is a duet by the same couple who are now in a relationship where the love of one of the partners has mostly dissolved. From the way the second duet opens, it's musically clear that there's something wrong with Otello. Like the first duet, both Desdemona and Othello carried the same tune. The difference is that, while Desdemona sang hers lovingly, Othello sang his sneeringly. After their first few phrases, Othello sings about how Desdemona has proven to be a female wolf in sheep's clothing. It's a drastic change from how he used to think of her as a healing angel. Iago's poison has diffused into Othello's heart. An innocent Desdemona repeats her intercession for Cassio's reinstatement. Othello pleads a headache. He asks Desdemona to soothe it with her handkerchief. Desdemona passes him her handkerchief. Othello declines it, insisting on the handkerchief he had given her as an engagement present. Desdemona answers that she didn't have it on her. Othello terrifies her with an ominous warning that there'll be dreadful consequences if she loses it. He demands that she search for it. Desdemona fails to grasp the situation. She's so naive that she tries to laugh Othello's warning off as a clumsy attempt to distract her. Desdemona stubbornly resumes her intercession. Othello repeats his demands. Finally, he loses his patience and yells for the handkerchief. Only then does Desdemona realize the seriousness of the situation. Othello now begins to use physical force on her. He forces Desdemona to look at him. Othello accuses Desdemona of infidelity. Desdemona strongly denies his accusations. This progresses back and forth in a short confrontation scene.
Tua condanna, i che sei casta, da sola, ti danna.
The confrontation scene which just ensued is not your typical confrontation scene. It involves husband and wife rather than villain and lover, but it spices the drama just as much. Othello's accusations cause Desdemona to cry. Their duet reaches its halfway point where Desdemona pours out her sorrow with heartbreaking simplicity that reflects how pure her character is. You can hear it from the evenly smooth way the soprano playing the role of Desdemona, Gabriella Tucci, sings her lines and how she maintains it throughout. Singing represents faultless character. Desdemona's tearful declaration of a faultless character is rewarded by Othello's cynical dismissal. She affirms her faithfulness, which he rejects. Desdemona now begs for Othello's fairness. He barks at her to get out. It triggers the strongest protest we've heard from Desdemona until now. This brings the duet to its climax. Desdemona's strongest protest only invites Othello's strongest ever accusation. He now denounces her as a woman who freely gives away her body. Horrified, Desdemona denies it. This denial shatters the final restraint on Othello's anger. His anger reaches a level beyond expression. No outburst can express it. Othello grimly ushers Desdemona out of the room, but not before hurling his final denunciation at her one more time. The showdown with Desdemona has left Othello spiritually depleted. It's a moment for him to contemplate what just occurred between them. This moment results in a musical monologue or aria where Othello's heart undertakes a journey through several emotions. During the last episode, I identified Othello as one of the twin peaks of the dramatic tenor's repertoire. As we've experienced, the role requires formidable reserves of vocal horsepower, not just for Exultate, but also for Ora e per sempre addio, as well as the Oath of Vengeance duet, Si per cielo. This is the physical difficulty of the role. There's also the artistic difficulty of the role. Up to this point, over the various acts, Othello has appeared as triumphant general, noble governor, passionate lover, jealous husband, and of course, a victim of brainwashing in his various stages. Each of these different modes of Othello has its own personality. In portraying every one of those modes, the dramatic tenor playing the role has the chance to exhibit his acting and interpretative ability. It's already an artistic challenge to render all of them in a credible way and to make us believe that they're all the same person. There's another artistic challenge which lies in the upcoming monologue or aria. This monologue or aria contains diverse emotions which the tenor needs to convey. They come in the form of a whirlwind in his heart that sweeps from one emotional state to another at a fast pace as he contemplates. The hard part of performing this is the tenor only has a short period of time to evoke one emotional state before he has to move on to the next one. Soon, we shall hear how Mario del Monaco, the tenor playing the role of Othello, does this. The first emotional state Othello's heart passes is emptiness. The duet we just listened to has emotionally drained him. He sings that God has returned him to the days of misery he had spent as a slave. Del Monaco deliberately softens his voice such that it will become barely louder than a whisper to represent a man with next to nothing left in him. As Othello carries on singing about how he has found himself back where he started, he gradually recovers his energy. Othello's heart now enters the second emotional state, sorrow. He sings that any ordeal God inflicted on him would be submitted to if only he could continue to receive Desdemona's love. Del Monaco portrayed this recovery by slowly raising his volume back up. For most of this second part, he sang with a voice on the verge of tears. When Del Monaco gets to the last part about submission, he sings it with a tone of resignation instead. The next emotional state Othello's heart reaches is longing. He sings about the blissful past he once had with Desdemona, which Del Monaco does here with yearning. Del Monaco sings poetically as his character recalls that time in his life. Othello decides to put those memories to rest. He struggles accordingly in his heart. After he succeeds in suppressing his remembrance of that period in his past, his heart has attained a new emotional state, solace. In his poisoned heart, Othello has condemned Desdemona. Nevertheless, before suppressing his remembrance, there has always been the possibility that any recollection of his former rapture with Desdemona might influence him to grant her mercy. With this remembrance suppressed, there will be no more conflicting emotions. Othello's newly attained solace will be borne out by Demonaco's tranquil singing. His heart completes its journey in malice. Being aware of how proud Desdemona is of her virtue, Othello planned to cause her maximum suffering by coercing her into admitting her sin and then killing her. He has surrendered to his worst instincts. Delmonaco sang the last phase of the monologue with animal-like ferocity to impress this on us. Like a lion roaring when its claim is prey, he released an exhilarating and robust high note upon Iago barging in to announce his fetch Cassio. Before I proceed with the rest of the story of Othello, I have some things to say about the monologue or aria I just explained. The monologue or aria is an emotional journey of the character Othello. However, the types of emotions conveyed are left to the dramatic tenor based on his understanding of Othello, his music, and his words. Othello's music and words will never change, but tenors may have contrasting readings of the type of emotion he is undergoing during each stanza of his monologue or aria. With their contrasting readings, tenors will perform Othello's monologue or aria in diverging ways. One tenor may give this stanza a certain feeling. Another tenor may give the same stanza another feeling. Both tenors may not give this stanza the same feeling as what we just heard from Delmonaco. The different feelings affect the tone, inflections, emphasis, and volume they employ. So one tenor's performance will have some differences from the others. It's the fact that one piece of operatic music can sound considerably different when sung by different singers that makes opera so fun. There can be so many variants. Interestingly enough, all of these variants can be equally valid. Incredibly, a few variants might even enable us to view the music in a way we never imagined prior to that. These things aren't restricted to this monologue or aria. They also apply to other musical numbers, but of course, each musical number won't have the same room to maneuver. When Iago announces his fetched Cassio, he urges Othello to hide himself before Cassio arrives. Cassio has arrived, thinking that he could chat with Desdemona about the outcome of her intercession for his reinstatement. Iago intentionally grabs the chance to strike up a conversation with Cassio about his latest female conquest near the hidden Othello. He whispers her name Bianca to Cassio. Iago jokes that she has him under her spell, which Cassio laughs away. The hidden Othello jumps to the conclusion that they are gossiping about Desdemona. Halfway into the conversation, Iago brings Cassio to resume it in another part of the room. It's far enough from Othello such that he'll not be able to eavesdrop on them if they were to speak softly. Cassio softly says to Iago that he's found an unknown handkerchief in his house. Iago secretly sends Othello a signal to move his hiding place closer. Cassio shows Iago the handkerchief he's found. Iago takes the handkerchief, which he holds in a position where the hidden Othello can see it. The handkerchief is the one Othello rebuked Desdemona for losing. He is led to believe that Cassio indeed had received it from Desdemona. Actually, Iago had sneaked it into Cassio's house under his scheme. A cannon is fired. Officials from Venice have reached. Iago advises Cassio to depart the scene to avoid running into Othello. Othello emerges from his hiding place. He consults Iago on how to murder Desdemona. Othello proposes poison. Iago recommends that he suffocate Desdemona in her bed. Iago tells Othello that he will deal with Cassio. He advises Othello to greet the officials together with Desdemona before perpetrating the murder to prevent suspicion. From being Iago's commander, Otello has become his puppet. In the first act, as we may have seen in that video, Otello was issuing orders to Iago. Now, the roles have been reversed. It's Iago who issues orders to Otello. The characters in the opera assemble to greet the officials from Venice. The finale for Act 3 of Otello now kicks in. The officials from Venice, headed by Lodovico, come in onto the scene. Lodovico has a message for Otello from the Doge of Venice. He hands over the message, which Otello reads. After passing the message, Lodovico notices that Cassio is absent from the scene. Iago explains that Cassio has lost Otello's favour. Desdemona interjects that Cassio will be restored to favour someday. Otello displays his displeasure as he's reading. As usual, Desdemona fails to grasp the situation. She foolhardily repeats her interjection, provoking Otello. He's ready to hit her, but he stops mid-air upon Lodovico's intervention. Lodovico and the others at the scene are appalled by Otello's violent behaviour. Out of the blue, Otello instructs a servant to get Cassio. He reads out the Doge's message. The Doge decrees that he is to return to Venice and Cassio has been appointed as his replacement. Lodovico urges Otello to console Desdemona. She's been sobbing all this while after Otello's attempt to hit her. Otello's sole response is that he and Desdemona will embark for Venice the next day. He then flings her onto the ground. Desdemona has a substantial solo passage where she sings how Otello's cruelty has devastated her. Otello unexpectedly goes into a frenzy. Iago informs everybody he's having a fit of madness. Lodovico tries to pull Desdemona away from Otello. She refuses to go. Otello rebuffs her. Everybody except Iago flees the scene. Otello hallucinates. Iago's poison seeps into his brain. Otello's hallucinations overwhelm him to the point he loses consciousness and collapses. Iago gloats at the fallen Otello. He has the temptation to place his foot on Otello's body, but he doesn't. The glorious general has sunk so low that the standard bearer feels touching the general's body is beneath him. We now reach the resolution of the opera, Verdi's Otello, its final act. The final act starts with Desdemona and her maid Emilia in her bedroom. Desdemona's husband Otello's conduct has hurt her so much that her heart has gone numb. She has a premonition of a tragic fate. On the spur of the occasion, she mentions to Emilia that her mother once had a maid who had been abandoned by the man she loved deeply, named Barbara. She also mentions that Barbara sang a song in the past, the Willow Song, which she sings to Emilia. The Willow Song is about a sad woman who was weeping under a willow tree. The woman's weeping drew the pity of the animals and objects around her. Judging by the content of the song, it's as if Desdemona is singing about herself, even when she's singing about that weeping woman. The Willow Song of Verdi's Otello, which mustn't be confused with the Willow Song of Rossini's Otello, another musical number nearly as renowned, Iago's Credo and Cassio's Dream are all musical numbers with a popularity and reputation on par with the two arias or monologues by Otello, which we sampled prior to this, Ora e per sempre addio and Dio mi potevi scaglia. Nevertheless, since the focus of the miniseries which this video belongs to is on the dramatic tenor exemplified here by Otello, I'll not be covering this. The next musical number, which follows the Willow Song of Verdi's Otello, that is another aria for Desdemona, is a separate matter though. This number is the other of the most famous musical numbers from this opera, only comparable to the Oath of Vengeance duet which we also sampled prior to this. When Desdemona is done with the Willow song, Emilia exits Desdemona's bedroom. Desdemona prays to the Virgin Mary. Her prayer, the Ave Maria, is the other of the most famous musical numbers in Verdi's Othello. Our focus isn't on Desdemona, so I'm sorry to say that I'll only be presenting the best parts of it, just to acquaint my viewers with this classic. The first part of the Ave Maria is a recitation of the customary prayer to the Virgin Mary in Italian. Then comes Desdemona's prayers for all of humanity. The best part of the aria is the last few lines of her prayers. Listen to the high notes in this part. The saccharine sweet high notes are so beautifully sung that they simply float. After Desdemona finishes her prayers, she turns in for the night. Othello comes in and gazes at the sleeping Desdemona. He approaches her bed and renews his gaze. Othello kisses her thrice. Desdemona is roused by his third kiss. She finds Othello by her bedside. He urges her to think of her sins because he's about to kill her. Othello pronounces that Desdemona deserves death for her affair with Cassio, citing the handkerchief he saw in Cassio's hand as proof. Desdemona rejects Othello's pronouncement. She requests that he call for Cassio so she can clear her name. Othello tells her that Cassio is dead. Desdemona wails that she is doomed. She implores Othello to spare her life. Othello's determined that she must die. He wouldn't allow her to live. Not an hour, not a moment, not a minute longer. Othello suffocates Desdemona. Just then, Emilia shouts for Desdemona to open the door. She brings news that Cassio has slain Roderigo. Emilia breaks the news only to discover a dying Desdemona. She asks who is responsible. Desdemona says that she is responsible for her own demise. She dies, requesting that Emilia place her under Othello's care and asserting her innocence. Othello declares that he is responsible and that he murdered Desdemona on Iago's testimony that she's been committing adultery with Cassio. He prepares to silence Emilia. Emilia screams for help. Cassio, Iago, and some soldiers rush to her aid. Emilia confronts Iago. Iago is uncooperative. Othello proclaims he's justified in murdering Desdemona because she gave Cassio the handkerchief he gave her as an engagement present. Despite Iago's insistence that Emilia be quiet, Emilia reveals that Iago wrested the handkerchief from her. Cassio reveals he found it in his house. One of the soldiers reveals that Roderigo confessed what he knew of Iago's scheme in his dying moments. Iago is now exposed. He makes a run for it, with a number of soldiers chasing after him. With Iago on the run, his poison dissipates. Othello regains his former self. He will sing a monologue or aria, the last musical number of the opera, first acknowledging the price he has to pay for Desdemona's murder. This will commence sounding just like the recitative in Act 1, where Othello intervenes in the fight between his subordinates with noble authority. Mario del Monaco, the tenor playing the role of Othello, thus tells us the victorious general is back, with a fleeting demonstration of vocal horsepower.
non mi tema, stanco armato mi vede. Ecco la fine del mio
In the following section, the awareness of his responsibility for Desdemona's demise and the full horror of his crime quickly catch up with him. Del Monaco sings with the voice of doom that his character knows will befall him. Othello pores over Desdemona's body. He mourns over her demise. Del Monaco expresses Othello's acute sorrow and remorse in an extremely affecting way. The last line ends with sobbing. Right from the start, Desdemona has always been the person with the utmost place in his heart. It explains how his deep love for her in Act 1 could fester into his deep jealousy in Act 2, his strong determination to kill her, most likely to deny her suspected lover in Act 3, and finally his profound grief here. Just as everyone thought that Othello isn't armed, he secretly pulls out his dagger and stabs himself. Othello has no further reason to live. Desdemona is dead through his own hands. He joins her in death, just like how they were once joined in love. Hence, the closing music and lyrics for this monologue or aria are the same as that of Othello's love duet with Desdemona. We now hear Del Monaco end the opera with Othello's last words.
Ucciderti, sposa ti facciai. Per morendo non rain cui vitato.
I warmly congratulate you if you've managed to make it this far. Verdi's Othello isn't just a peek in the dramatic tenor's repertoire. I personally consider it a peek from a listener's point of view too. My videos for Othello are the longest I've made thus far. Their level of detail might seem intimidatingly great. The narrative I've provided is fully packed with incident. Anything that happens during the opera is here, at least what went on in Mario de Monaco's live performance in Tokyo, which was featured in these videos. The music might seem heavy-going. Every section of its musical highlights or each passage has a certain meaning behind and or to it. Could all this be overkill? The story of Verdi's Othello is actually very simple. It's so simple that it can be summarized in one line. It's about a successful general being brainwashed by his subordinate into murdering his beloved wife. If it's that simple, why did I go into such detail? Was it even necessary? Such detail is necessary since its composer Verdi and its librettist Boito deliberately structured their opera this way. Othello is a psychological drama where its accompanying music and the lines that are being sung work together in creating a series of musical pictures. All these musical pictures portray its title role's descent into madness in all its stages with vivid detail. From the music, we can actually taste the poison Iago drips into Othello's mind and heart. We can also feel the mental and emotional turbulence it triggers. We also can sense the effects it leaves on the people around Othello when it increasingly spills over into his relationships as well as his interactions with others, and worst of all, the way he performs his duties. Speaking from first-hand experience, I can safely tell you that the damage which anxieties, fears and suspicions can cause to the mind and heart when left to run wild, as well as the things which brainwashing does to people, are both portrayed with disturbing accuracy in the music. Verdi and Boito have designed their joint collaboration in such a way that you know what these experiences are like without having to go through it yourself. This is the power of this opera. You can see the opera as a highly realistic musical simulation of a person's descent into madness. Verdi and Boito have scattered a lot of hints here and there to point its various stages out to us. Just like in real life, the signs and symptoms are quite easy to miss if you don't know where to look or you don't have enough experience or knowledge to detect them. That's why I've tried my best to identify them where I could. Most of the musical passages in Othello's solos and duets have a short commentary. This commentary might seem impressive, but actually there's more which remains to be said. The commentary only gets as far as the vocal music and not the orchestral accompaniment. That's still not all the content which this opera has to provide. Remember Iago's Credo, Cassio's Dream, the Willow Song and the Ave Maria, which I covered briefly? All these can be commented on with as much detail, if not more, than Othello's solos and duets. Desdemona and Iago are supporting characters in this tragedy, but they are rewarding in their own ways. Desdemona is one of the saintliest heroines in all of opera. Her innocence is otherworldly even in opera itself. Her murder is all the more atrocious for it. Iago, on the other hand, is one of the greatest villains in all of opera. Firstly, he's more evil than the devil himself. At least the devil wants Othello's soul, but Iago doesn't even want that. He wants to destroy him completely. By manipulating Othello into murdering Desdemona, he's destroying the reason for his existence. Secondly, the role itself has a challenge that's as huge as Othello. Iago needs a baritone who not only has the vocal resources to match Othello, but also one who's a talented actor at least. Otherwise, how else could the singer playing Iago give life to a character more evil than evil itself? Together, all these enable Othello to become one of the greatest musical dramas in opera. If you already enjoy drama because of its ability to explore real-life situations and address issues in the world that are relevant to us, Othello is an ideal place to launch an adventure into the operatic world. There are few pieces which are as effective in this respect. The source of the opera, Shakespeare's Othello, is already regarded as one of the world's greatest ever tragedies. The operatic adaptation gets to the heart of it and draws out its essence like none other. Some, like the playwright George Bernard Shaw, even said that the opera was superior to the play itself. If you found that this opera has too much substance for you to grapple with, don't lose heart because you're not alone. Othello was an opera I was unwilling to attempt since it was the play I had to study in high school. I overcame this reluctance to try listening. My first 2 attempts ended in such failure, I labelled Othello as an opera to avoid as I never appreciated it. I had to be convinced to attempt it one final time, which turned things around. This is the beauty of opera. There are some masterpieces which you can't appreciate at first. After some time, later in life, or when you've heard other masterpieces, you're somehow able to appreciate them when you revisit. Thankfully, the next opera I'll be presenting should be less difficult and therefore more approachable. If you had fun watching this video, please help me like it. If you'd like to continue chasing this series, please subscribe to my channel. If you wish to express your views about it or discuss it further, please feel free to leave a comment. Thank you and stay tuned.